Imagine a bee constantly bustling around outside. During the day, it moves from flower to flower, then rises into the air and suddenly disappears from our sight. We're used to seeing this. But this morning, you pause, look around the hive, and there are dozens more bees, all in the same direction and in the same line. Not a single one collides. So who is telling it this? There's no sound, no signal. Yet everything is working in perfect order. While you're perhaps lying in your house, the hive in your garden will be working in a different reality. The queen bee will have already made her decision. The workers will have stored their food down to the gram, and the temperature will be maintained with more precision than a thermostat. In fact, none of this is accidental, and the most surprising thing is that what makes this order invisible is actually order itself. Welcome back to the Bees Around Us channel. Before we get to the video, I want you to subscribe, because this channel reveals the big unseen truths hidden within the small things in your garden. Stay tuned to the end of this video, because the last point I'll explain will very clearly illustrate how a colony makes decisions, and that none of these decisions come from a single entity. So let's start with our first point. 1. Who is the queen bee, and what does she actually do in the hive? Generally, most people naturally think of the queen bee as a manager, that is, giving orders, sitting in the center, and making decisions alone. In fact, this idea is both true and completely false. The queen bee is constantly moving around in the hive, but her orders are not given through sound or movement. It's a chemical language. This language is called pheromones. The queen bee constantly secretes molecules from her body that can be detected both by touch and through the air. These molecules suppress the egg-laying ability of the worker bees, keep the swarm instinct under control, and ensure that the colony acts together. In fact, there is also the truth that the queen bee's identity goes much deeper. Actually, she is not born a queen. Any female bee in the hive can be a queen bee. The only difference is that the one fed with royal jelly takes a different path. Their reproductive organs develop fully, and their lifespan is extended. Of two larvae hatched from the same egg, one becomes a worker and lives for 50 days, while the other becomes a queen bee and can live for up to 5 years. The hive makes this decision silently. Also, a queen bee can lay an average of up to 2,000 eggs per day. To feed herself, the queen bee cannot eat on her own. The court around her both feeds her and helps carry her pheromones to every corner of the hive. In fact, contrary to what we think, the queen bee is not a ruler, but a signaling center. You can feel her presence in everything without ever seeing a queen bee in your garden or anywhere else. A strong queen bee holds everything together. If a hive loses her, it struggles before falling apart, and that struggle appears as silence from the outside. 2. How do they choose a queen bee, and what happens between them and their rivals? As we mentioned earlier, the queen bee is not actually a queen by birth. Any female bee in the hive can take on this role. She may even have hatched from the same egg as the worker larva, but royal jelly transforms her into a completely different being. A hive doesn't raise just one queen candidate. In times of crisis, when the current queen is weak or the hive is preparing for division, the workers build multiple queen cells simultaneously. Of course, multiple larvae grow in these cells, and when those larvae mature, a silent and ruthless competition begins between them. Unfortunately, as a result of this competition, the first queen to emerge wanders around the hive, finding and stinging other unopened queen cells. The painful truth is that the rivals die before they are even born inside the cells. If two queens emerge at the same time, their encounter becomes inevitable. This encounter is a duel, and only one survives. The hive cannot intervene. It can only watch. This struggle has taken place within the hives we consider silent. In fact, one day, perhaps the queen you see right now is one who emerged from this duel. She is still there, still sending signals, still working with all her might to keep everything together. 3. What happens to the hive when the queen gets old? First of all, I want to say this. When the queen bee is strong, the hive is whole. But as the years go by, things begin to change. Pheromone production decreases. That chemical signal gradually fades. And the hive senses this. The truth is, as soon as the workers sense this change, they spring into action. The new queen's eyes begin to open, silently, while the queen bee is still there. This is not a rebellion. This is an instinct to secure the colony's future. Beekeepers call this process silent change. The existing queen bee is slowly ostracized by the workers. The new queen bee gains strength, and one day the hive changes hands. The old queen bee often cannot survive this transition. Also, sometimes the hive doesn't wait. If the queen bee suddenly disappears, becomes ill, or is killed by an intervention, the hive doesn't panic. It switches to emergency protocol. If there is a larva less than 3 days old, the workers begin to feed it with royal jelly, and a new queen bee is raised from that larva. This window is narrow. 3 days. If that time has passed, the hive is left without a queen bee, and this could be the beginning of the end for the colony. I also want to point out that you can't know how old the current queen bee in your garden hive is. But the hive knows. And when necessary, it will have already taken action without your knowledge. 4. How can the queen bee affect the temperature of the hive? First of all, I would like to say that the ideal temperature inside the hive for the brood area is between 34 and 35 degrees Celsius. This value coincides with the range maintained by the most sensitive laboratory incubators, and maintaining this temperature is directly linked to the presence of the queen bee. There is also the fact that the queen bee concentrates in the areas where she lays eggs. The worker bees cluster around her, both to protect her and to receive her pheromones. This clustering also generates heat. The area where the queen bee is active is the warmest point in the hive, and that temperature is essential for the healthy development of the eggs and larvae. There is also the fact that when the temperature drops, the worker bees huddle around the brood area, vibrate their wings, and generate muscle heat. When the temperature rises, they bring fresh water, line up at the entrance, and provide air circulation with their wings. But the center of all this effort is always the same point, where the queen bee is located. Ultimately, when the queen bee weakens or disappears, this coordination of the worker bees also breaks down. The clustering breaks down, the temperature becomes unbalanced, and the brood area becomes vulnerable. The hive loses this balance before it loses the whole thing. I should also add that, right now, thousands of tiny bodies are generating heat inside the box in your garden. The center of them all is that single entity you can't see. 5. What happens when it's time for the queen bee to leave the hive? In these weeks of autumn, tension can build up inside the hive. The colony has grown, the space has narrowed, and the queen bee's pheromones can no longer reach every corner. The hive is at a crossroads, and when it crosses that threshold, one of the quietest migrations in history begins. In addition, the queen bee leaves the hive, but she is not alone. Half of the colony is with her. Tens of thousands of worker bees go outside, forming a huge cloud in the air, and settle on a nearby branch, a wall corner, a fence post. The hive falls silent. The outside remains motionless. This swarm is swarming, the colony's method of multiplying by division. Specifically, within that swarm, the queen bee stands at the very center of the cluster, surrounded by thousands of worker bees who warm and protect her. From the outside, it appears only as a trembling crowd. Inside, however, the scout bees have already dispersed. They are searching for a new nest. They report to each other with waggle dances, forming a consensus on the best option. This process takes hours, sometimes days. Of course, when the decision is made, the swarm rises as one body. The queen bee, in the middle of that crowd, invisible but decisive, flies towards the new nest. In the remaining hive, a new queen bee has already emerged from the queen's eye, silenced her rivals, and taken over the hive. Of course, there's also this situation: 2 hives from 1 queen bee. You might see this scene in your garden one day. That trembling crowd on a branch is actually the moment a civilization splits in 2. The truth is, that wooden box standing in the corner of your garden seems silent right now. The autumn chill has slowed the entry. The traffic has decreased. Everything has calmed down. But inside, the queen bee is moving. Pheromone signals are being released. Winter workers are storing fat. Heat is being retained by thousands of tiny wing beats. The males have already been left outside. The explorers aren't planning for spring yet. They're only holding on to today. As you can see, that single bee you saw when you went out into the garden with your morning coffee wasn't just a bee. It was a hand reaching out, a messenger, a sensor of a collective of 10,000. And wherever that bee flew, hundreds of decisions followed it, silently, perfectly, without you seeing. You've been living alongside this for years. Now you know. Besides all this, a question for you. Have you ever examined the entrance to the hive in your garden? Does that entrance narrow or shrink in the autumn? Did you notice this, and what did you think? I'm waiting for your comments. See you again in the next video.